used to have a mustache.
Hello.
All right, Supervisor Gold, we had a little bit of trouble with the audio, but everybody is here and present, and we're glad to have you with us on the telephone. So today is April the 30th. This is a special meeting of the Board of Supervisors. I'll call this meeting to order. The Board of Supervisors may, by motion, recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorney on any item contained in this agenda pursuant to ARS 38431.03. So this morning, this will be a discussion of possible action, an update from the County Public Health Director to the Board of Supervisors regarding recent issues, actions, events, and county responses regarding the COVID-19, and taking any necessary actions based on the updates. So I wanted to start out this morning by just saying that navigating this ever-changing landscape of the COVID-19 has really been challenging for all of us. Our communities have changed the way they do business, and our staffs, some people's staff has been laid off, and family lives been disrupted in ways we never thought possible in America. So the road to recovery is going to be long, but I believe this board must begin a phased approach toward reopening business following the direction given by our governor yesterday, and as well as our health professionals, recognizing that acting quickly could cause a resurgence of cases. So I just wanted to recognize that I do agree with Supervisor Angus and Supervisor Gold with the timeline for relaxing the stay-at-home restrictions that we're going to be discussing today as we balance the priorities going forward in a thoughtful and flexible reopening plan. So Denise, I'd like to start this meeting by turning the floor over to you and ask you to explain the public health considerations for reopening and how the Mojave County plan might differ from the White House plan and or the governor's plan. And then I'd like to ask for input from each of our supervisors to add or remove items from the draft plans and get an idea of where we're heading and how we're going to do this. So I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay. Madam Chair, members of the board. So looking at the public health considerations that are included in the plan, are we good? It is green.
There we go. It's on.
Test. I think what we're emphasizing from a public health perspective is that we can continue to emphasize the need to follow the preventive measures that we've put in place from the very beginning, which are really no different.
They can't hear you. I'm getting notice that they can't hear you.
Thank you. I'll wait.
Okay, it changed. Now that you got your exercise.
You have someone watching that's texting you?
She said you couldn't hear me, but I know we're a little behind, a minute behind.
Okay. Are we good? Test? Okay. Okay.
Sounds good, Denise.
Okay. So again, what we're looking for is just to continue to emphasize those preventative measures that have been put in place for some time now related to COVID-19, but many of those also relate to flu and many of the other respiratory illnesses. So those measures would really be the same, and we would continue to emphasize them moving forward. Beyond that, really, it's about the sustainability of the plan. And by that, I mean, we realize there are very significant economic and social implications to the stay-at-home measures that are currently in place and moving forward. And what we want to ensure, just as the governor does, is that we have a sustainable plan moving forward and that we can make sure that we don't have to take any steps backwards, because that's a very difficult decision to make, just as it is to make to close and continue the stay-at-home order. There are some changes to the governor's plan, and certainly those would be such that I would defer to County Attorney Esplin to help us with an explanation about the county's role and how we implement those orders, as we are more of a recommendation agency or department, and we want to fulfill that role for sure, but we also want to make sure that we're aligned with the Board of Supervisors' recommendations and direction.
Okay. So Attorney Esplin, did you want to chime in at this time, or you want to wait?
I can chime in now, or I can wait. I don't know exactly what you want to chime in on, though. Maybe wait until there's a specific question.
Okay. Okay, we can do that. So what I want to do is put this question out to all of you today is how do we shut down this virus instead of shutting down the economy? So that's kind of where I would like to see this discussion go this morning. I want to shut down the virus. I don't want to shut down businesses. But at the same time, we have a governor's executive order, and I believe that that executive order is enforceable. So as we go through our discussion today, keep that in mind, and I'd like to start the discussion with my Vice Chair, Buster Johnson, and then I'll be asking everyone else for input and suggestions on how do we get this done. So Supervisor Johnson, you want to start us out?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've all seen the plan that Denise has put forward, which I think is probably a good plan. It follows the president's and the governor's.
I cannot hear Supervisor Johnson.
Is yours on? Does it show?
It's on, Ron. Can you hear me?
No.
Was that a yes, Supervisor Gold?
Negative.
Okay. Okay, we have IT working on it, so can you hear me okay?
I hear you, Chairman Bishop.
Okay, well,
Now, Ron.
I only hear Supervisor Johnson on someone else's microphone.
you might,
How about now, Ron? There you go.
Loud and clear.
All right. Okay, I'll repeat it. I think that the plan that Denise has put together reflects what the governor has said and also what the president has said. The one thing that I think we have to go by is Arizona Revised Statute 26-307 that states that state agencies, when designated by the governor, and counties, cities, and towns may amend and rescind orders, rules, and regulations necessary for emergency functions, but such shall not be inconsistent with orders, rules, and regulations promulgated by the governor. And I'm worried about us, making sure that we follow what the governor says, because we have been taken to task before by the state legislature and with threats of taking away our state shared revenues. So that's all I have to say, Madam Chair.
okay. Do you have any specific recommendations on how you would like to see businesses open back up when the governor gives the okay?
Well, I think we just have to follow whatever the governor puts out. I don't think that we can make any on our own if it goes against what the governor says.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Watson.
Really don't have more to add than what Supervisor Johnson's already indicated. I'm very unhappy with the timelines that are involved here all the way to the middle of May. But it is what it is. The governor has indicated those doctrines that we need to follow, so we will have to follow or experience the wrath of the higher element of government.
Okay. Supervisor Angus.
Well, I have more than that. Is this the time to read a full statement? Or are we going to ask questions first?
Well, I'm opening it up to suggestions on how to reopen our businesses when the governor gives the okay. So,
Okay, well,
so you can determine how your statement
okay.
fits into that.
Yeah, it's a little difficult because my statement is more of an overarching statement
Would you
about...
like Supervisor Gold to go first?
Yeah,
then?
why don't you do that?
Okay, Supervisor Gold.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Frankly, I'm disappointed with the governor's lack of removing the shutdown stay-at-home order. I do not see how phasing it back in is going to make it any better. I don't know what they've been working on. They should have had their plan laid out already by this point, because tomorrow is the day that we were supposed to go back to work. I think that restaurants should be able to open if they maintain social distancing. We should take a look at their occupancy rating and figure out a multiplier to their existing number so that we can tell them how many diners they can have in their establishment. Our retailers should use a model similar to what Walmart and Home Depot are doing now, by limiting the number of people that can come into their retail establishment. I believe that hairstylists and barbers can mask up and that they can provide a safe atmosphere for people. But I'm just disappointed that we've essentially pushed this out another 2 weeks, and I'm concerned that our folks will go another 2 weeks without being able to make a living. The whole phased-in reopening, to me, is just ridiculous, because it's going to take you 2 weeks to find out if you increase the number of people that are coming down with COVID-19. So with that delay, I don't see what that phased-in response is going to accomplish. But the Americans are not going to tolerate a lockdown that's tight enough to stop the spread of the disease. We would have been far better off if we had followed the model of Sweden, where we let high-risk people isolate themselves, where we quarantine sick people, and where we let the rest of the population use social distancing and hygiene practices. They'll see our herd immunity far before we will. But at this point, I still think the faster we can open our economy up, the better off that we'll be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And that's along the lines of what I was hoping our discussion could go this day, with some ideas of when we can open, what we should do to begin the phase to reopen our government. And some of the ideas that I came up with, and I'll go over these because I know you want to make a statement, and it doesn't go along with what we're doing here today, so I'm going to put you off for a second. So some of the restrictions, I believe, such as masks in restaurants and bans against large gatherings, should stay in place for some period. I also think that some non-essential businesses, if they can prepare for reopening by putting together an operational plan that includes limits on the number of people in the business at any given time, would be a good idea. I think low-contact businesses could reopen with small staff, if they only have 2 or 3 person staff and limited customer numbers. I think those could be easy to reopen. And I think we should continue with the suggestion of face coverings in any retail business, or especially public transportation. And then people over the age of 65, we should encourage for them to be a little extra careful because of their vulnerability. So those are just some ideas that I came up with, and it's very similar to what Supervisor Gold came up with, so I thank you for that. Supervisor Angus, you can make your statement now.
Thank you very much, and I agree with most everything you said. Well, the last month has been the most difficult since I've been supervisor. I want to thank my constituents who have sent countless emails, texts, short notes, and multi-page letters, and business reopening plans. Some want to continue the stay-at-home order. In my observations, most don't. Most see this as an infringement on our rights. I know there's not enough time today to read each of these out loud. I will submit them to the clerk of the board to disseminate to the other supervisors and to the health director. Like a lot of people, I watched the governor's press conference and was very disappointed. I respect the governor. I know any decision made by him or by us for that matter has no winners. That's why it's so hard. But as a course of action, I will always come down on the side of freedom. So after we watched the press conference, I was contacted by the three of our state, well, all of them, our delegation, our state representatives, who shared that disappointment. And together, the four of us wrote a statement, and I'd like to read that now. And then after, I hope we can hear from the sheriff, Doug Schuster. So if I can continue, Madam Chair?
You
Thank
can.
you. Dear residents, this is from our state delegation and myself. Dear residents of Mojave County, we first want to say thank you for staying strong during this crisis. We are experiencing something none of us have ever experienced before, and so I know this is new for all of us. These few weeks have been difficult for everyone. We have lost jobs, businesses, critical funding, but more tragically, we have lost lives. One single loss of life due to COVID is one too many, but our thoughts and prayers are with each and every family that has lost a loved one. Up to this point, we believe that we, as a society, have done a tremendous job following the orders of the governor and the president. Because of our incredible cooperation, our numbers have stayed low in Mojave County. We have also been inundated with so much conflicting information that many of us are confused as to what to believe anymore. But one thing we know for sure is that we have stayed strong and we will recover. Over the last few weeks, we've been able to secure more test kits for Mojave County, allowing more individuals and healthcare workers to seek testing if they feel they have symptoms of COVID-19. That being said, we must remember that the numbers of infected are going to rise because we are testing more. The United States has the most cases in the world because we have tested more people than other countries. We must take that into consideration when reporting, because if we don't, it is going to seem like things are getting worse, and that will always only cause more panic. We must use common sense when looking at the numbers and continue all data when making a decision to move forward. It is our belief that at this time, we must begin to safely reopen our county. We are smart enough as a society to figure out how to open our businesses while still protecting our citizens. How do we justify allowing hundreds of people to be in Walmart, but a salon with 3 customers must be closed? Explain to me why someone can buy jewelry at Sam's Club or Target, but a small jewelry store is not deemed essential and must be closed. The stay-at-home order had flaws from the beginning because it allowed for government to pick winners and losers, and the biggest loser has been small businesses. Small businesses are the lifeline of our economy, and we must do everything in our power to make sure they do not fail. And we believe that the only way that happens is if we implement a plan to gradually open up now, and we are willing to work with all of the small businesses to do that. I can assure you that if businesses do not provide a safe environment for customers, customers will not continue to go to that business. When did the government dictating who can stay open and who can't become acceptable to us? And when did we become okay with being threatened with 6 months in jail and a $2,500 fine for keeping our businesses open? We are not ready to throw away our constitutional rights and freedoms over this crisis. Let the consumer decide the fate of a business, not the government. Let us be clear, we're not saying that we must ignore the seriousness of COVID and open our county irresponsibly. Larger gatherings should still be phased in over time. Protecting our nursing homes, the elderly, and those with compromised immune systems should be our #1 priority. We can implement a plan today that can protect the most vulnerable while still giving us back our freedoms. I am confident that beauty salons, barbers, tattoo parlors, etc., can structure their business operations to practice social distancing while also staying open. Common sense must prevail, and we must stop the complete destruction of our state before it's too late. And if the numbers begin to rise to levels of concern, we can scale back just as quickly as we did a month ago. Like President Trump stated, the cure must not be worse than the problem. Furthermore, if you do not feel safe going out in public or attending businesses, we ask that you continue to stay home. If you have underlying health conditions and fear for your safety, please continue to stay home. If you feel sick, go to your doctor and get tested. Wear a mask, wash your hands, and continue to practice social distancing. It is still your choice and freedom to do what you wish during this crisis. But it should also be our right to reopen our economy if we feel we can do so safely. We must believe in ourselves and plan a way to reopen responsibly and begin to free ourselves from government dependence. Mojave County, it's time to open up. Senator Sonny Borelli, State Representatives Regina Cobb and Leo Biasucci, and Mojave County Supervisor Hilda Angus. Thank you.
That was a very well-written story that you put out there. I'm disappointed that I wasn't part of the process and the rest of the board, but I do have a text message from Senator Borelli, and I'll read that at this time since we're making political statements here. Mr. Borelli says, I find it ironic that tomorrow, May 1st, is National Loyalty Day. We all know as elected representatives, our constituents, that we are sworn to serve and not our subjects and should not be treated as children. I can assure you, your legislative District 5 team has been working tirelessly to push the governor to allow local jurisdictions to retain the freedom, modify restrictions or businesses that can keep workers and customers safe. We are asking for your continued support, Sonny Borelli. So Sonny just sent this to me at 10:30 this morning, so that's the first I've heard from any of our state reps, although I did attempt to talk to Leo Biasucci, our state representative, yesterday, but he was celebrating his birthday, so I certainly understand not receiving a return phone call. So you said you wanted the sheriff to speak?
Oh, yes.
I think
Sheriff,
this would
he's
probably
here, I
be...
think.
Good morning.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Good afternoon. Thank you for that correction.
It's afternoon now. Distinguished members of the board, Madam Clerk, Mr. Epsilon, thank you for the time. What I would like to do is read a prepared statement that I have to put on record with the permission of the chair.
The sheriff gives you permission.
Okay. As sheriff and as the chief law enforcement official in Mojave County, I, like many, have been consumed by the COVID-19 pandemic as it pertains to the well-being of our citizens and the disruption of daily activity. In an ongoing effort to ensure the safety and security of the citizens of Mojave County, my staff and I look for factual reporting and trends each day in order to determine what can best be described as a media frenzy of misinformation, speculation, and contradiction. I even see division amongst our states and division amongst the federal government. This is a very confusing time. This division isn't regarding to the severity, the reported cases, the tested cases, and even the morbidity rate. There's simply a tremendous amount of variances that make it very difficult to understand the overall risk of this virus compared to other pandemics, such as the flu, that we've been able to track. Now, I'm no doctor. I do not profess to have the answers as it pertains to COVID-19 in reference to a scientific or medical opinion. But what I do understand is the great economical and personal strain this pandemic is placing on many individuals and businesses right here in Mojave County. As a long-term resident, I have witnessed firsthand many hardships placed on my friends, my neighbors, and fellow citizens. Many questions have been raised. I feel it's incumbent upon county government, especially the elected officials, to provide some sort of answer. And I'm very pleased that we're meeting today. I like what I'm hearing. I too was very disappointed in the governor's address yesterday. We have reached a point where many believe that businesses were going to open tomorrow, or May 1st. We learned yesterday at Governor Ducey's press conference that this was not the case. Certain businesses were compelled to remain closed for additional 2 weeks, wherein a reevaluation would be made. In addition, the governor extended the stay home, stay healthy, stay connected executive order that was originally put in place on March 30th. Now, I am very proud of the manner in which our citizens have responded to this pandemic. The intent from the onset was to slow the spread in order to avoid overcrowding or potentially putting too much stress on our medical facilities. And we've done that. We've done a great job, and that's because individuals are taking personal responsibility. My prayers go out to those infected. I mourn the loss of life here in Mojave County. It is a sad day for our country. It's a sad day for the world, and we all need to get this behind us, and I pray it happens soon. So what am I asking? I'm asking the public to please remain patient. Continue to exercise personal responsibility in regards to social distancing and make every effort to avoid unnecessary contact. In regards to the governor's latest executive order, I have advised my staff that any query regarding that order is to be directed directly to me or my command staff. We are not going to respond, meaning on the street level. It's going to come through command staff and we'll go from there. I'm truly hopeful that everyone continues to do their part as we move forward through these trying times. I believe every citizen should exercise good judgment and personal accountability, and I think we're at that point. Supervisor Angus said it very well. The citizens of Mojave County are more than capable of making good decisions. I wish to stress to those who are in self-isolation and those who are rigidly practicing social distancing that they're making a good decision for their own well-being. I commend that. I am in no way implying that these practices should be stopped. I have elderly parents and in-laws who I haven't seen personally in over a month. I respect and support their decision to err on the side of caution and remain self-isolated. So having said this, I have a responsibility as your sheriff to the citizens of Mojave County. It is my job to ensure their freedoms and liberties are safeguarded. I am not going to make criminals out of law-abiding citizens that are struggling to make ends meet and put food on the table. This is a public health issue, and when I say that, I'm not pointing at public health in general. This is a health issue that's affecting the public, and we at the Sheriff's Office are not going to become the social distancing police. This pandemic has affected everyone in one way or another. Law enforcement and all first-line responders across the state have done a tremendous job dealing with this unprecedented situation. I would hope that you all appreciate and express your gratitude to the men and women who have and will continue to put themselves in harm's way for you. To the citizens of Mojave County, I say stay safe, stay healthy, stay informed, and please continue to take personal responsibility for your own well-being. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheriff Schuster. Does anyone have any questions of the sheriff? Starting with Vice Chair Buster.
Thank you. Are you saying, Sheriff Schuster, that you're not going to enforce what the governor says?
Say it again, sir.
You're not going to enforce the governor's order? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying I disagree with the governor's order as it pertains to the criminal aspect, and I am not going to put people in jail for violation of that executive order that I addressed.
Well, I don't know, and I understand it. It goes, looking at it from the county's perspective, besides, we don't want to arrest people because then we got to put them in jail and then we could spread the virus and all those things that come up. But you can cite people. Reason I'm asking for clarity is, and maybe Mr. Esplin can jump in, is I'm worried about the millions of dollars that are at stake in our budget if the governor decides to withhold our state shared revenues.
Supervisor Johnson, I completely agree with that statement in the sense that we want to do what's best for our state. We certainly want to do what's best for our county. I'm simply saying that as sheriff, I cannot in good conscience issue citations or arrest people for social distancing, a recommendation violation, or businesses that elect to serve food. We've had complaints of businesses serving food and the people are eating in the parking lot, and we're getting called out to take action, and we're not going to do anything with that. I'm not going to control where people eat their food. I'm not going to go down and tell people there's 11 in the group, we're going to separate you. We are not going to take criminal action against these things.
Thank you.
Okay, Sheriff Schuster.
Madam Chairman.
Supervisor Gold, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to commend the sheriff on his action. As the highest constitutional officer in the county and under the rule of posse comitatus, the sheriff is the law, and I'm glad to see that he isn't willing to throw our folks in jail for something that he doesn't agree with. You know, the governor has his own police force, and that's called the Department of Public Safety. And if the governor wants the Department of Public Safety to become the social distancing police, he can do that. But I just want to thank our sheriff for his stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gould.
Okay. Supervisor Watson.
Thank you, Chairman Bishop. Sheriff Schuster, thank you for your presence today and your presentation. I think it's very important for us to send an extremely strong message to the governor. Mojave County is unique. Of all of Arizona, we're being invaded each and every weekend that there is pleasant weather. We're being invaded from California and Nevada. And those thousands of people that are invading us, I doubt if each and every one of those people are virus-free. I commend the efforts that your Sheriff's Department has done in the past, and I'm sure that they will do in the future. Knowing that, you know, each person really needs to take their own personal responsibility in this, but we're being ignored by those folks that are coming from California and Nevada enjoying our Colorado River. I encourage that each and every one of our citizens continue to follow safe guidelines and distancing. But I think it's very important that we as Mojave County government try to stop the discrimination of each and every individual business. I was a small business person for almost 50 years. And it's very important to have those revenues, cash streams, and dependability so you can offer your employees that stability that is certainly not here today. So if we can establish, maybe all of us get together, establish some guidelines for those personal service industries such as beauty salons, barbershops, restaurants, and those kind of things, maybe if we step forward with those guidelines, maybe somebody will hear us, the governor's office. I'd like to thank you for your presentation this morning and your entire group of people that are servicing Mojave County Sheriff's Office. Thank you.
Supervisor Watson, thank you for those remarks. And I think I need to stress back to Supervisor Johnson's concern. This is unprecedented water that we've been swimming in for some time. We want people to comply. I am hopeful that people will comply. And you can see here in Mojave County, before the orders were issued, that people are doing their best to protect themselves and others. You're never going to control the actions of an entire populace. And yes, this is a scary thing that we're facing, but we have to find a line where we say, look, if we go too far one way or the other, now we're dealing with personal liberty and freedom that is granted to all of us based on the opinion or the order of one. Now, I don't want to see the county lose any funding from the state, and I would hope that the state is very understanding of the position we're in, but in the same vein, I have to take a stand to ensure, at least reassure the citizens of Mojave County that I will protect their freedoms at all cost. And that's the point I'm trying to bring out today, so thank you.
Supervisor Angus.
Thank you so much for erring on the side of the Constitution and on liberty, and that is what Mojave County is. That's who we are. It's in our DNA. And I agree with you. People have to take responsibility. There are no guarantees in life. And it's all about personal responsibility. And thank you for your strong statements.
Thank you.
Okay, Sheriff Schuster, I just want to say I was surprised to see you this morning, and you're very welcome. I'm glad that you were able to come, as well as your Chief Deputy McKee. I think the governor's was strong in his message when he said that his executive order is enforceable, and I don't know if he can make you enforce his orders or if he would have to send in the Department of Public Safety, which I don't know if he's prepared to do that or not, but I certainly agree with Supervisor Watson's stance that maybe if we set the tone, if we figure out how to reopen business in Mojave County, come up with a written plan and submit it to the governor's office, maybe we can jumpstart the entire state to follow suit. But as it stands now, I think everybody in this county is going to have to decide person by person what risk they're willing to take. Life has risk. So what we're doing here in Mojave County, I believe, is we're trying to manage the risk to acceptable levels that will help us get back and reopen these businesses, and at the same time protect people's health without violating the governor's executive orders. So again, thank you very much for being here. And I'd like to ask Mr. Esplin if he can just give us some legal guidance here as to whether or not we as a state and a county are violating anybody's constitutional rights based on this national emergency that's been declared. And then maybe a legal opinion, if you can give us one, as to whether or not the sheriff is good in his thoughts that he's not going to be the social distancing police. And I certainly don't think you should be.
Well, I'll adjust that last one. I don't think the governor is asking you to be the social distancing police. I've read through a couple of his executive orders, the ones that are pertinent to here, and I don't think he's asking for law enforcement to do that. I don't think that's the intent of his orders. I think Supervisor Johnson hit it right on, and this is the key, and this is something that I would just recommend that we all follow this. It's 26307, and it says during the state of emergency, as it applies to the counties may make, amend, and rescind orders, rules, and regulations necessary for emergency functions so long as they are not inconsistent with the orders, rules, and regulations promulgated by the governor. So we got to follow what the governor says. Governor says it, he's the executive officer of the state, we have to follow the governor's orders. But anything that is not within those orders, then we can address it for our own local needs and so forth. So really, I think I applaud Supervisor Angus for her efforts to contact the governor, because that's where the source needs to be. To address those things, we've got to address the governor and say, hey, here in Mojave County, those orders need to be changed. Those things need to be done. And so that's what needs to be done, and I applaud her for that and doing that. But the key is we got to follow what the governor says, and to get that addressed, we got to fix that. Use the legislators, use those people who have influence to communicate with the governor so that those things can be changed and so forth. I applaud Sheriff Schuster. I think he does a fantastic job, as well as all of the force that he has, and I applaud him for his willingness to follow and make sure he's following the Constitution and make sure that people's constitutional rights are protected. I don't think he came up here saying, nope, I'm going to flaunt the governor. That's not the message that I got from Supervisor Schuster. That's not the message I heard here today. What I would recommend that he follow what the governor has said. I've been trying to read a little bit of what the pulse is for other law enforcement agencies throughout the state, and I think they're kind of taking the similar approach of, we want to instruct citizens, we want to encourage them to obey. They don't want to arrest them. They don't want to cite them. They don't want to put them in jail. But if push comes to shove, there may be an instance where the sheriff may have to do that. And if he's asking for my opinion, I would say yes, there's an executive order, and there may be an instance where you may have to arrest somebody or you may have to cite somebody. I don't know what that instance is right now, but there could be something that would happen. And if that were to happen, I'd be happy to consult with the sheriff's department so that they can understand when they should or when they should not. I'd be happy to, our office would be happy to assist in that. But as a general principle, as a general rule, we do not want to put people in jail for the reasons that were already stated. We don't want to do that. And I want to make sure that's very clear. We don't want to cite, we don't want to. But there could be instances where you're going to need to, and it's your responsibility to follow the law just like anybody else. And there may be times when you're going to have to do that. And I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Supervisor Johnson also brought up a point that we should absolutely understand is under Arizona law, if the board takes any official action or makes any kind of if it takes any kind of official action or passes a resolution or an ordinance that violates state law, we do run the risk of losing state shared revenue. It's a law that was passed just a couple years ago, and what it is a member of the legislature can file a request with the Attorney General's office to investigate whether the county or city or town has violated any state or constitutional law. And if the AG finds that, then they gives us 30 days to get in compliance. And if we do not get in compliance, then we would lose our state shared revenue. And that would be in the orders of millions of dollars potentially. So we always want to make sure we've earned the side of law. I haven't heard anything today to suggest otherwise. I think everyone here wants to do that, and we want to make sure we follow the law. But I think we all kind of heard that there's some frustrations and concerns that are going out there. Our recommendation from the county attorney's office is that we obey the law, that we voice our displeasure and concern if we have concerns to the governor, and we move forward. At some point, we're going to get through this, and I am looking forward to it just as much as anybody else, because I want to get through it too. But for now, let's just follow what the governor has said, express our displeasure, make sure we're not violating any civil liberties, but also make sure that we're not violating the law either. Any questions about that?
Yes, Ryan, I have a question. If a business owner is encouraged to open against the governor's executive order and they open that business, is there any liability to the county for giving false expectations that nothing would happen to that business?
Oh, potentially there could be. If we're giving wrong advice to somebody, then no, we shouldn't do that. I doubt there'd be. I mean, it'd be pretty tough to suggest that we would be liable unless there was an official action. But I still don't recommend that we would recommend to somebody to violate a governor's order or a state law, anything like that.
Okay, so we want to encourage our citizens to follow the executive orders, and if they want to go out on a limb and open regardless, that's not an issue that's going to come back and bite the county. That's an individual decision.
Yes, that would be the individual.
That's not supported by this county.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't hear that anybody here is encouraging that. We're not.
No, I was just throwing out a for instance.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Madam Chair? Oh.
Madam Chairman.
Johnson. Supervisor Johnson, go ahead.
Thank you. I think the board has made it very clear that they're not in agreement with the governor. I think that in our position that we're in, it's kind of hard to have personal opinions, to act upon them. And I understand what the sheriff's saying coming from law enforcement. I wouldn't want the sheriff or somebody else telling me to go out and cite people or arrest people for opening a business. It doesn't seems like contradictory to everything that we do as a board of supervisors or law enforcement. I think that we have to be responsible in our response because of the, of the actions that we take. If it could have a financial impact on us, I think that my recommendation to the sheriff, and they've probably already done it, would be if the sheriffs as a whole approach the governor or ask if, maybe your chairman of your organization could say, hey, we'd like a sit-down meeting because, if you're all in agreement, we think this is, ridiculous or whatever else you want to do. And the same thing with our legislatures. I don't know what they're doing. They haven't contacted me. They should be working with the governor to try to get him to readjust his views and his executive order. The legislators can make statements, but unless they're meeting with the governor to try to get it straightened out, I think words are just words. And I also worry, and this is a serious matter, and I don't want to see anybody lose their job, and people opening businesses the same as you all, they all call me. But I caution on the side, and we have Constitution, which I understand Supervisor Angus and Supervisor Gould, but the sheriff knows that, we can't have people picking and choosing which laws they want to abide by. If we say we have a flood and we say you can't go in it, and they say, oh, it's my right as an American citizen to drive into that flood if I want, we have to stop them from hurting themselves and others. But I think when we have a bad law or a bad order that comes down, it's our responsibility as a board to try to change that law, not to try to go against it, because I think then we're going to be wasting not only our reserves, but the reserves of the state if they're going to be arguing with us when we could be working maybe to find an answer that would stop us from having to have a fight with them. That's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Sheriff Schuster, go ahead.
Supervisor Johnson, you make excellent points. and you talk about the scenario of the flood. I think the position that we're trying to point out, and please bear in mind, this is not trying to butt heads with the state in any way, shape, or form. The governor's under a tremendous amount of stress. He's doing clearly what he feels is best for this state. But in the instance of the flood, I am not going to allow myself or my staff to be put in a position where I say, you can drive through that flood and you can't. And that's the issue we're having. There's no all or nothing here. There are a lot of mitigating factors, and I'm looking at it 100% from a law enforcement perspective based on the Constitution. Laws are on the books. They've been on the books forever. I may disagree with them, but they don't violate constitutional law, so we enforce those laws. That's the difference. There's a constitutional issue when you start controlling people's movement, attempting to control people's movement through incarceration, or the threat of incarceration. So I think the point I want to make is this. Take comfort as a board in knowing that in every situation within my jurisdiction where incidents occur, I'm going to deal with it personally. I'm going to make that decision. It's not on you, it's on me. If the governor doesn't like what I'm doing, the governor could take action against me, but that's why I'm your sheriff. That's why I've been put in this position and elected to look out for, you know, the interests of the public. So it's not an easy answer. We've had great discussion on this going back months now. But again, I have to live with myself and I have to do what my conscience dictates, and that's why we've reached this point today based on the press release yesterday. And I don't think I'll be the only sheriff around the state saying these things, so thank you.
Supervisor Gold?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The law that Attorney Esplin references, its basis in law is Senate Bill 1487. And what 1487 says is if an action of the board violates state law, that if they have 30 days to remedy that, and if they do not remedy that, then they lose 10% of their state shared revenue. I would argue that inaction is not an action. So they would have a hard time holding back our state shared revenue because we decided to take no action against our citizens for opening up their business. Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree with Supervisor Gould. You know, it's that 30-day is very important in this whole thing, right? Because it would take 30 days, and just out of, you know, being logical, we have a Republican governor and Republican House. We got 3 very high-level Republican representatives at the state, and I would seriously doubt they would make that happen. And as to go on what Supervisor Johnson was saying, you know, money, we're losing so much money now by not having these revenues coming into the county because of businesses being closed. And again, it's so arbitrary about which businesses are open and which is closed. So just to go for that overarching philosophy, I trust our people to do the right things for themselves and for their customers and their families. And I think that's what pretty much you were saying. Thank you.
I'd just like to reiterate again that we need to send a strong message down to the Capitol and hopefully get the attention of the governor that Mojave County is unique. If Phoenix were invaded by 50 or 100,000 people on the weekends, he may be able to see the light if that were to occur. What's occurring to us in Mojave County is we're seeing 5,000 to 10,000 people coming to our Colorado River shores and enjoying those. And when they're doing that, they're not practicing safe distancing. There are a number of people that are, you know, on the beaches, that are partying on the beaches. So why in the world do we have to put up with the invasion of people from California and Nevada on our Colorado River shores and being exposed to those people that are bringing those possibilities to Mojave County? Are we to sit here and stand and make sure that our residents that are being exposed to those people coming in and just ignore that? That's my question. And I guess if I were to propose an action, it would be to make a recommendation that we send a letter to Governor Ducey indicating that Mojave County is in a unique situation. We must do something about it. Either halt the invasion or make some adjustments to those businesses that can properly serve those. And that's all I wanted to add.
Thank you.
Chairman Bishop, I just want to add something to what you said. I take a little bit of issue with your characterization of an invasion. So many of those people are people who have second homes here in Lake Havasu City and in Bullhead City, maybe even in Kingman. And they come and enjoy their house, and we are prospering from. We need those people. These are our neighbors. And you can't, again, like you were saying, you can't restrict people's travels. We're not going to shut our borders. We're not going to do that. So you do the best you can with the situation you have. So out of all the things that we can, ask the governor to, interject on, I really don't see that, and I don't see it as an invasion. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
I would like to direct staff, as well as as Denise, to get together and put together a letter to send to not only the governor, but also to our state legislators who helped Supervisor Angus draft that elegant letter that she read. So I think the message needs to be put together as to how Mojave County stands on this issue, and ask the governor for guidance on how to proceed, because we are in Northwest Arizona, quite different than the metropolitan areas that he's most accustomed to. So Denise, can you help put that together, please?
I can. And am I going to be working with one of you in drafting that, or?
I think if you'd work with the county manager and your department and put something together, and then bring it to me and let me take a look at it.
Madam Chairman, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Hendricks.
I was listening very intently to the board, and even though you have a lot of things that are in common with your discussion, I believe that a direction to prepare a letter should be by motion, and it should be clear what you actually want with that letter, included in that letter. The way I understand it, there was some discussion about shutting borders, and there was opposition. There was some discussion about compliance from Supervisor Johnson, and I'm just didn't feel like there was an absolute consensus that staff could work under. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yeah, that's good to point out, and there are some agreements here, and there's also some disagreements on how we want to go forward. So I would entertain a motion then.
Well, Madam Chair, I think if you had your motion or your direction was probably good, because we have another meeting scheduled for Monday. Mm-hmm. And so if they put some document together, they could incorporate pretty much everything they thought they heard, and then the board would have something to act on instead of all of us throwing ideas out. At least we'd have a paper in front of us to say, yeah, I like this idea, I don't like that, and then we could vote on each one.
So a draft letter that we could then critique.
Madam Chairman, if I could, I thought Supervisor Angus's letter was an excellent letter, and probably a fairly good representation of, if I was going to pick some direction, it was a fairly good representation of what I would have guessed the board collectively believes in. And it could be used as a template if that's something that the board could support in a motion to us. Or we could certainly abide by Supervisor Johnson's suggestion.
Well, and you could use that letter. I don't have it in front of me, I don't believe, but
let us take a shot, Madam Chairman, let us take a shot using, if Supervisor Angus would allow us to use her letter as a template.
Absolutely.
Let us take a shot of utilizing that to form a letter, and then at the next board meeting, we could actually agendize that and attach it as backup information, what staff's draft would be, if that's acceptable to the clerk.
And I was referring to the health meeting that we have, not to the regular scheduled meeting.
Madam Chair, what we did on the regular meeting agenda was we put basically this item that goes on the special meeting very last. The intent of that was to kind of request today that instead of having the regular meeting and then who knows how long of a break in the other one, that you could have your regular meeting and we could still do this, but we would do it as the last item of the regular meeting on Monday, so you guys aren't having 2 meetings back to back. But I believe then that could be addressed during that item at that meeting.
And if the supervisors would also agree, we could incorporate some of the thoughts that wonderful thoughts that Sheriff Schuster brought forward in the language he had. I thought that was an excellent speech that he gave, and we could try to meld something, try not to make it too long, but to the point, and then have that included as backup information for board consideration. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's good, and maybe condense Supervisor Angus's letter down a little bit and add Supervisor Watson's comments on getting together a plan to submit to the governor. But
Chairman Bishop, I want to make it clear that this letter was not just my letter. This letter was actually primarily written by Representative Leo Biasucci and signed off on by all of our delegations. So if it's okay with the board, I think it would be stronger if the board, in conjunction with our delegation, if we're going to be addressing the governor in this letter, be included if they wish. Would anyone have objection to that?
I would not object to that. I think the letter should come from the chairman of the board as well as our legislators, rather than to go through your office. I think it would send a stronger message from the chairman of the board. That's why I was surprised that I wasn't included earlier on that.
And the supervisors. Well, open meeting law issues too. So.
The only thing I would question would be if we approve something on Monday and somebody else, and we could say, with concurrence, or if they want to sign on with us, just that nothing was changed after we make our decision, if we come to a decision.
Supervisor Watson.
Thank you, Chairman Bishop. I'll withdraw my comments about the invasion and just call it outside influences. How's that?
That sounds much nicer, thank you.
I still, if I may interject, I still think we ought to just do a motion, move here to direct staff to prepare a letter for delivery to the governor, consistent with the discussion we had today, and bring it back for Monday for final decision, something along those lines.
Madam Chair, and then I would then ask the question: does that have to be a separate item, or can they address that during the COVID item as they did today?
We could do it on the COVID item, but if we could we still do it as a separate item? I'd prefer to do it as a separate item.
As long as we get it on there by the end of the day, pretty much, yeah.
Is that possible to do it by the end of the day? No?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful at all. We've got the press conference at 2:30 and then the 3:30 meeting. I'm just trying to make sure that we can compile. And I don't know that would be realistic.
The letter doesn't need to be done by the end of today, just the item for the agenda has to be done today.
Madam Chair, that's correct. I would have to have it agendized before, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. However, you could still be working on the actual letter itself, but we'd have to have it on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I can prepare a board action form for that effect to get that.
Okay, so I will put that statement in the form of a motion. Ryan?
Yeah, move to direct staff to prepare a letter for delivery to the governor that encompasses the ideas and arguments that were made today to be brought back to the board's agenda on Monday for final review and approval, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That would be my motion. So I'm looking for a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Motion passes 4-1. Okay. Supervisor Angus.
Can I go back and just ask a question about testing and with some new information that we just heard about?
Sure.
That I'm confused about?
Well, if you're confused, let's clear it up.
I don't like to be confused, although I am very often. Denise, so now we're hearing about some mass testing with SonoraQuest. Can you explain that? Because I'm getting a lot of questions and I don't know the answers.
Certainly, certainly. I do have some information about that as well I'd like to share. Thank you. This event is basically a statewide event being organized by the Arizona Department of Health Services, so they have a specific web page dedicated to this with the specific locations and hours, and et cetera, of the testing locations. So this is actually, as I understand it, and I can speak for Sonora Quest and what we have learned from them for the events here in Mojave County, is that this will work off of the standing orders that Dr. Chris put together through the Arizona Department of Health Services, which basically says if you feel like you have been exposed to COVID-19, that you can come and get a test. And so this will be a drive-through testing event. For example, the one that we have that we're aware of today. And this is ever changing, just so you know, as companies or organizations come on board and commit to a testing event or a testing day, which is the next 3 Saturdays, then additional information will be added to this website. But what it is that you can basically get in line and through this drive-through testing, and it starts at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I believe it goes till 1 o'clock in the afternoon at Kingman High School this weekend. And they will swab, and then you will receive test results within, they're going to be using their own lab. So I'm not sure of the time frame for those test results. I'm assuming it will be somewhere around the 2 to 3 day range. They've been pretty timely now. But at this point, that's what we know. I understand that there may be some other events in Mojave County, but I don't have anything to refer to at this point. ADHS really just informed us yesterday of this Kingman site. So and it's not even posted, or at least it wasn't this morning when I went onto the website for this. It wasn't listed as a location yet.
And it's Saturday?
It's Saturday, correct.
And is it free?
Yes.
You don't have to sign up, you just drive your car over there,
drive your
wherever it
car
is? That's not listed on the website.
Correct. And I think that's why ADHS is recommending, and so would we, that we notify law enforcement and fire, because you can bet once that word is out, there may be a pretty substantial line of people there to get the service, and I'm not sure what traffic control will look like. I'm not sure what their setup will look like.
Denise, in Phoenix, I read where they were requesting that you call ahead and make an appointment, or make an appointment online. I'm assuming that our location would be similar?
I hope so. We've reached out to Sonora Quest to ask for more details, and I don't know that I've gotten that information yet. I'll have to check through my emails.
Okay.
And when I do receive more information, we'll be certain to share it, and we'll make sure that it's shared also on our website, on our Facebook page.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Supervisor Johnson.
These tests, how many do they have? Are they going to run out like every place else?
Well, that's another very good question, Supervisor Johnson. The requirement to participate is that you have adequate testing supplies, because these groups have to supply their own testing supplies, and adequate PPE to provide the testing. It doesn't specify, the information I have does not specify the number of tests that they must have, or the PPE that they must have on hand. So I'm afraid I can't really answer your question specifically. I just know that that's what's been shared with those groups before they committed to doing so.
Okay, and I might have misunderstood from Supervisor Angus. Are these tests free?
I believe so.
Okay, they are free. Now, do these tests, will they come back that you're positive, or will they come back that you have the COVID in your system that you could have recovered?
Right. So these are actual COVID-19 tests. So they won't be antibody tests. These are tests. So this will come back and say whether or not someone is positive or negative.
Okay. I have another, not on this, but some other questions if we're going to, once you're done.
Okay, anyone else? All right, so my question to each of you today is still, how do we shut down this virus instead of shutting down the economy? So I believe we'll continue to be working on that question. I think the letter will help a lot, and look forward to seeing the draft of this letter on Monday. Okay. Mike Hendricks. I started to call you Supervisor, but
I'm sorry.
not myself.
Well, just one more question. This is probably, it was from a constituent, and they had requested that I ask this question of our attorney and the board. Their logic was that the COVID virus is contracted through the nose or the eyes or the mouth, and basically their thoughts were that if everybody wore a mask, that would stop the virus, whether that's logical or not. But their question that they wanted me to pose at the open forum, and I told them that I would, is if the board so chose, do they have the authority to pass an ordinance to require that masks be worn? And their thoughts were that could possibly open up businesses quicker and stop the virus at the same time. And I think I sent that question to Ryan. Thank you.
I think, and I'm just kind of, I apologize, I've been tied up with a couple different cases this last couple weeks, or this last week. Yes, the public health director could issue an order directing the residents of Mojave County to wear masks. That is legal, it's possible. But it would have to be consistent with the Arizona Department of Health guidelines, and also it could not violate any governor orders, so I'd have to check that. I don't think it would, but it's possible. Whether it's realistic or not, I don't know if that's really my purview, but the legality of it, yeah, it's something that could be done, so yeah. But whether you want to do that or not, that's a different question.
So Denise, same question. What are your thoughts on that? If we passed an ordinance requiring masks be worn by every citizen in Mojave County, would that stop the spread of this virus?
Well, there's a couple of factors that play into this. So the first being the fact that there are certain populations that are more at risk than others. So we know, for example, it's not that younger people can't get it, but we do know that younger people generally don't. And I mean smaller kids are much more resistant, apparently, to this. So when we talk about everybody, are we talking about a certain age group? Or are we talking about everybody? Secondly, it's not a foolproof solution. It is definitely a barrier. So don't get me wrong, it does have some protective ability. But if you take an example of someone, and we all do this, we touch our face probably 40, 50 times in an hour, and we don't even recognize that we do that. So every time we touch it, we're dirtying the mask also. So we do have to be mindful of the fact that there are, how many masks can people purchase and use throughout the course of a day or multiple days, and safely use them and reuse them. So I think there's a lot of considerations, and going down that road probably has more questions than answers at the moment. I'm happy to talk with my nursing division manager and try to gather more information on masks and whether or not that's a practical thing that people can do. And I think that's more my question.
Madam Chair.
Okay. Supervisor Angus.
I think it's unrealistic to force people to do anything like this. However, I'll tell you that every reopening plan I received from a business included masks. They understand the importance when you're conducting business, but you're taking that we could get them, first of all. It's been a problem for a month and a half, and that people can afford them. So that is not a direction I would like to go.
Madam Chair, to follow up on that,
Sure.
I've also heard that some places say that's a false sense of security, because now when people are wearing masks, they forget about the 6-foot distancing and that, so it could cause problems that way too. But
Very good point.
so I do have a few questions though for you. We're getting ready to close.
Could I respond to one question? I received an answer about the number of test kits available for the testing environment on Saturday, and there will be 500 tests available.
Okay. And would that be, we don't know, there's supposed to be 2 other dates. We don't know if that'll probably be the same.
That's correct, I don't know.
Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll
I
turn
have
it
some
over
questions.
to Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of these are repetition, but I believe we all keep getting them, so maybe you can reinforce them.
Sure.
We're told we have to stay at home. At the same time, we're told that those people only suffer, most people only suffer mild or moderate symptoms. Can you explain why everyone is being told to isolate instead of just those most at risk?
Certainly. Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. So one of the worst characteristics about COVID-19 is that it can be transmitted from one person to another without one knowing it. And I mean, flu is very much the same way, although you tend to have a lot of symptoms, but there are individuals out there who have little to no symptoms. And so as a result of that, a person with mild or no symptoms who doesn't know it can spread that disease to the next person. And in that case, it could be accidentally spread to a pregnant woman or to an older adult. And so that's why it's more generic in its approach, is because while we can ask those individuals who might be immunocompromised or more vulnerable to self-isolate or to protect themselves, at some point they do need to be able to get out and engage in regular activities. And it does, it's, again, Supervisor Angus, to your point too, it's why they're doing more testing. Can we identify the people who are positive and get them self-isolated? And the more we know there, the more we can kind of move forward. So really, it's about the risk of someone who doesn't know that they have COVID-19 sharing that with somebody else.
Thank you. Now that more tests are finally available, lots more cases are being diagnosed that probably would not have been in the past weeks. When will antibody tests start being done so that we can actually tell how widespread the COVID-19 is?
So this is a very evolving situation. Many of you have probably heard about the U of A testing, serology testing that will be conducted here. There's been no timeline for that. I know that there's a lot of discussions going on with different organizations about participation in that study. And at this point, it's more of a research study because they're still trying to learn and improve the reliability of that testing. So I don't have a time frame that I can necessarily provide to the public to give them an idea of what that's going to look like as far as when that serology testing, antibody testing might be available. But I do think it is a priority, and it needs to be. And I think in the future, it's not that far out in the future that we will see that.
Thank you. Now the board's kind of discussed this, but what criteria must be met, I mean, from the health department to start getting back to normal? We just had, what, the highest volume of positive cases in the state, what, today, or the numbers came in, and we see Mojave County's going up and up. Do you have any kind of an answer to that?
Well, I think, from public health's perspective, we're aligning our actions, if you will, with the governor's actions from a point of how to move forward. With that said, I also understand, based on the conversation yesterday in the press conference that was conducted, that he did set forth 2 dates, May 4th and May 8th, for at least some businesses to consider voluntarily opening up. And I think, we're looking at public safety and health, but we recognize the challenges of that compromise when you talk about economic and social vulnerability for the county. So with that said, I mean, we also recognize too, we're going to be living with this for a while. I mean, even beyond kind of the curve piece that we're seeing, we know that there's a possibility of a recurrence of this as we hit flu season next year. And that's going to be something that, again, the research is getting, the amount of research that's being conducted on all of these issues and questions is going to shed a lot of light on to all of us on how we move forward. But I think that, we've got to figure out a way to to balance those economic, social needs with the public health, and we need to consider that for the long term. So, you know, in terms of answering your question, it goes back to looking at how we interpret and manage the governor's direction and move forward.
Thank you. Are we listing now all of the zip codes that have 10 or more cases?
I believe on the ADHS website, you will find case counts for each zip code. And if it's below 5, it will say less than 5. If it's above 5, I think it goes 6 to 10. And I think after 10, it will list it as an individual number and not a more than or less than.
All right, also, can we tell the public if a case is linked to restaurants, grocery stores, or other place that a good majority of the public may have frequented? Because if they worked with the public, it's impossible for everyone that came in contact with to be informed. This is information that's just adding to the question they had. This is information that we should be informed about, and it would prevent any future lawsuits, given the info doesn't violate any privacy laws. That's not my statement, that's somebody else's.
Sure, sure. Supervisor Johnson, there's a lot of factors that play into that. One is that a person may have been in multiple businesses. We don't know when they were infected. And so you may have a person that gets tested, but they may not have showed signs or symptoms of that for 12 days. And for them to recount where they've been for 12 days, knowing that they could have been infectious during that time, we oftentimes don't get that level of detail in that, and they could have been all over town. So I'm not trying to push back, just the reality, I guess, is that that would be a very difficult thing to say unless we just knew that there was a very specific point of contact there. So in those cases, we may be able to provide that information that these people were in that business, but like the library case, where we knew somebody had been, going to our county library and sitting in the back as a way to distance themselves from people. So we did let the public know in that case because we knew. And so where we can be confident that we have that information, it can be shared, but also they may not have been in contact with everybody. If I said I was going to the grocery store or Walmart, for example, and I know they limit the number of people, but did I interact with that person? It could create a lot of undue concern for people if they just know that that person, and do they know what time of day they were there? Because that person may not have been there at the same time as someone else. And so there's a lot of, like I said, details that go into providing that kind of information. I think could be as or more confusing to the public than anything else.
Did we receive the tests that were supposedly coming from ASU?
The testing machine?
No, weren't we supposed to be receiving more test kits?
We did receive 206 more test kits, yes. We just received those this week.
Okay, I guess, following up on that one, I'm a little concerned that, I don't know, maybe we can get better numbers, because I know Havasu listed that they had less than 1,000. That could be 2 or 999, if we can get that number, and the little amount of tests available in the Bullhead area. Should we add, did the 250, did that come to the county, or did that come to the hospitals?
It came directly to the county from Arizona Department of Health Services.
Now, is that for us to use, or is that to give to hospitals? And
We can choose to use them any which way we see fit.
because I'm guessing we'd want to, because the biggest concern probably is our senior care facilities, so we want to make sure they have them.
Correct.
But at the same time, if we have low numbers at one hospital, I would think maybe that's the reason why they're not doing as many tests. I guess we're probably 250 just a drop in the bucket if they're doing 500 at the one deal, so it really didn't help us that
Right.
much. Can you tell us why we can't release the name of the long-term care facilities when they're infected?
You know, we're, in most of these cases, well, in the cases, these are residents of these facilities, and we don't give out addresses for cases. And so therefore, we'd be in the same position really here, where if we shared the information about the facility, we'd be essentially sharing someone's address. And that is our concern. We also recognize that this is a very difficult disease to control, and so it's affected a number of these agencies across the country. And we recognize that each one is trying to address it, and we are working with all of these long-term care facilities overall to ensure the prevention and containment, if you will, of any kind of spread. So we're just trying to basically provide that confidentiality for those patients that are in there and not providing an address of the facility, which would give away their location.
I don't know if you
physical
can
address.
meet with the attorneys, or maybe that's the opinion they've given you, but it's like the long-term care facility has already been outed on Facebook and other places. It just makes the board, and I think everybody, look like we're trying to hide something when everybody and their brother in the county already knows where it's at. Just because it's a facility, and most of these facilities, I know we have some that are small that might only have 5 or 6 or 10 or less people, but some have a few hundred or something. I don't know. I guess that's just something I think the attorneys have to work out. So it looks like we're more open with people
Yes.
than we are being. Now, I did have a chance to talk with the attorneys. I don't know if they got a hold of you about, we're going to start releasing more information now that our numbers are getting up. You know, that it was family related, that it got this from their father, or instead of just saying epi related all the time, because that epi word kind of bothers everybody. Is that something that we're looking to phase in here pretty quickly?
Right. So a couple of things on that. One is to actually reword epi-linked, because there are a lot of people who don't understand epidemiology or epi-linked and what that means. So I think in the press release yesterday, you saw that it was linked to another confirmed case as a different way to explain that. If you're asking for greater detail than that, it just depends on the case itself as to whether or not we can share more information.
And can we just, I mean, as a matter of fact, we're at over 100 cases now. Can we say that, you know, they're no longer 18 to 44, that they're 32 years old? I mean,
Right.
we have a lot of cases. I don't know every 32-year-old in the county.
What we were working with was the zip code level data that ADHS has provided on their website. And when we have a age group that exceeds 10, that we can provide some greater detail. I don't know that we could say specifically a certain age per se, but I will certainly look to see if we can expand that data out a little bit into some deeper level. And I know when we're looking at that 65-plus category, what we've looked to do is see if we can adjust our age ranges slightly so that we can provide, and hang on just one second, here we go. So when we get to that 65-plus range, we realize that can be a fairly large age range at that rate. So what we are looking to do is change that, at least in our reporting. I don't know that we can change it on our website. We'll look at with IT to see what we can do there. But to put that as age ranges from 65 to 74, 75 to 85, and 86 plus, as just trying to give more information about an age range than what a 65 plus really gives you.
And we also get a lot of questions about recovery rate.
Yes.
You know, can we go in, because we've had, I don't know, 116 cases now. Can we, I mean, obviously we've had so many deaths, so you could actually see, except for the people that are under the 14-day quarantine, but can we start, you know, putting that out? I still think we should have the overall case number, because that's how many cases we have, but we could say, you know, and that's just an estimate on our part, because we're going by they told us they recovered. It's not like it's scientific or doctor approved, but we could say we have 117 with X amount of deaths and so many recoveries.
Right. So thank you for that. We're, now that we have some additional epidemiological help in a staff person, I think we're looking into how we can report that out. I did ask, as of today, what that recovery rate looks like for our county and our numbers, and our epi mentioned that we were at about 40 to 50% of the cases that we have now have recovered, would be considered recovered. So there's still a good number of them, as you can see, that are still being followed and monitored.
I think that's taking up as much time as you want.
Okay, so Denise, we can assume after 14 days that that patient has recovered.
Yes.
Is that the way we would report it then?
Well, and I was talking to Anna, who's our epidemiologist, right before our meeting, trying to get some more information. And there's a number, again, of factors that play into how you define recovery. Are they released from our monitoring, or some of these cases are still hospitalized? So there's things we're just trying to work out so we can really clearly define when we say this number is recovery, what does that actually mean?
So maybe we could use a different word rather than recovery. We could say no longer being monitored, or.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the question we really want to answer and be very thoughtful about. And I don't mean to delay the process, but just making sure that the number that we can come up with, we can provide to you on a regular basis, and we can update that information consistently so that it's available to you.
I would think if what Supervisor Bishop is saying, Chairman Bishop, every day you have so many people you have to make contacts with. So if, I'm just guessing at the end of the day, you say, how many contacts did you make today? And they said, oh, we made, 47. Mm-hmm. So obviously 47 people are still, whether we want to say they've recovered or not, I mean, those people obviously haven't recovered. Then we add up the ones in the hospital, mm-hmm. and we just say, well, we figure that the other ones are no longer systematic. I think that would be hopefully good enough information for the board and everybody else, because it's just a guess on our part anyway.
Right, right. And to your point, we don't necessarily contact people every single day. We might contact them every 2 or 3 days. It depends on the case and their needs. So that's where I said it may not be an everyday number that we can get, but we will look and see how we can do that and how frequently we can update it for you so that it stays current.
Okay, Mr. Esplin.
I just want to kind of stress and clarify really what we're trying to do with these numbers and the privacy things and stuff like that. Supervisor Johnson made a point of that it's perceived as if we're trying to hide something. And I hope that people don't have that perception, because what we're really trying to do is we're trying to protect a person's right to privacy that has been granted to him by Congress. And Congress has passed specific laws that give people those rights. Just like we here today have been talking about rights of a business owner to open up, the right of business people to transact and do things, this person has a right to say, you know what, this is private information. And that's what we're trying to protect, is that. But on the same side, we're balancing. That's a balancing act, and that's what all that's been going on, what the governor's been doing, what you guys have been doing, is you have to balance the right of that individual versus the right of the public to know so that they can be safe as well. So we're balancing that, and that's what's been going on here, and what public health has been doing, not only here in this county but throughout the state, to say, okay, let's balance that person's right to privacy, but on the other hand, we also want to make sure that the public is aware so they're safe. So that balancing goes back and forth, and we want to try to get it as level as possible. There's times when it gets a little bit out of balance. There's times when maybe the privacy gets a little bit too much, but then we got to kind of get it back in square. Other times the privacy goes a little bit the other way, and we need to get it back to square. That's what we're trying to do here, and so that's what public health has been doing in that fluid situation. I mean, the purpose of that is really to avoid the situations where somebody is being unlawfully discriminated because we've provided too much information about that. You think of the leper situation where, does that person suddenly become a leper because everybody knows that person has that information and has that thing, and suddenly now they're being unlawfully discriminated against because we have disclosed private health information about that. And so we're balancing that. It's not perfect. I'm not going to say that we do it perfect, but we listen to what other people say, we listen to your concerns, and we try to address that thing. I've talked with Supervisor Johnson, asked that I talk with one of the attorney generals about it, and I did. I talked with him about it so that we make sure that we're getting it right. We're not perfect, but we're trying our very best to balance those things. So.
Okay, thank you. I think people are just so frustrated with this whole process, the isolation, the mask, the hand washing, that they're just lashing out, and we get to be the brunt of some of that lashing out, and I certainly understand that. So.
Well, and the same, right? I mean, you can open up a newspaper or turn on the internet, and you're getting different information kind of pushed to you every single day. Some of it scientific, some of it not, some of it vetted, some of it not, and we're in the same boat of really just trying to read everything that we can and stay current, relying on some of our sources, the WHO, CDC, and ADHS, as those higher level agencies that are vetting it for us, if you will, coming down, and just trying to do the best job we can to provide as much information and relevant information and accurate information as possible out to the community. But it's no doubt a challenge every day.
It is. Okay. Supervisor Watson.
Thank you, Chairman Bishop. Ms. Burley, I've got a question. The 11 deaths that we've experienced, how many of those deaths were over 65 and had other underlying conditions, and were they termed deaths due to the virus or deaths due to other underlying factors, such as a heart problem or a liver or cancer or those types of things? What I'm trying to do is identify more closely what we're trying to get out to the public is that if you do have other underlying health factors and you're a lot more at risk with this disease than you are the other factors of, those folks that are less than 65 years of age and in good health. So of the 11, how many were over 65 years old and how many had other underlying factors, and were they determined to be the cause of death, the virus?
I don't know that I could answer that question entirely without more information in front of me, so I apologize that I'm not prepared to answer that in that level of detail. But I'd be happy to, again, look into that and make sure that I can provide that out to you. Generally speaking, we know whether or not they have some underlying health conditions. That's not always the case. So we can certainly be as clear as possible on that, and we can certainly tell you whether or not they're in the older category, for sure.
Well, I can appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Okay, Denise, I have a text message, excuse me, from a constituent that wants to know that let me see if I can get this right. She wants to know, because our golf courses are still open and Nevada and California's are closed, could that be the reason that our COVID-19 cases are increasing in the Kingman area, because folks are coming here to play in our golf courses?
I think what we're seeing at the rivers and the lakes and so forth is probably more, if you will, concerning, because those people are in much closer proximity than what you might see on a golf course. I haven't looked at golf courses to see how busy they are, but I did see the line of cars waiting to get into the lake. So and it's hard to say, because once they get out onto the lake and they're enjoying the outdoors, what is their risk factor and their risk of spread? Is it on the way to the lake? Are they a group that's very familiar with each other? Is it all familial? Lots of questions. So I don't know that you could really tie it directly back to the golf course being open per se. The trails are open in parks, and in large part to give people an opportunity to get outside and recreate and enjoy some of the outdoors while they're staying home and staying healthy. We do have to allow people to move somewhat and get out and enjoy some of the weather and the trails and a golf course in some settings that are more conducive to physical distancing anyway, are good venues for that.
Yeah, I agree. I think until California and Nevada lift their restrictions, we're going to continue to experience the overcrowding in our recreation facilities, especially the lakes and rivers. Supervisor Angus.
Just to go back to what Supervisor Watson was saying about underlying conditions in the cases where there was death, wouldn't the age 96 being underlying health condition?
You know, I don't know if in and of itself, if it is. If someone is healthy and doesn't have any high blood pressure, high cholesterol, or any other health issues, then they're a healthy person. And age may be somewhat of a risk factor in and of itself, but it may not be considered an underlying health condition.
I understand that, but since all of the deaths have been over 65, and I think the point is that I think it's important, we've had this discussion, that the ages are more specific, and I appreciate you changing those age ranges, and I'm thinking maybe we can even tweak it a little more. I'll talk to you, but thank you for doing that. And then to talk about Mr. Esplin's thing about privacy, and it goes back to the beginning of our discussion. So many people have been asked to give up their rights. So why is this right so sacrosanct, so important that, for the good of the whole? And that's been an issue, and it's a big thing now, these HIPAA laws, because there's now experts who are saying that this isn't what the HIPAA laws were supposed to protect. And what is the public right to know? When does that supersede one person? And especially, like early on, we were told that the family of one of the first people who passed away said it was okay to do it. But then the state took it upon themselves to say, no, we can't do that. So, I'm hoping that in the near future that these are really looked at and examined, and maybe that's the way we've done it all the time, but maybe it's not the right thing to do.
We'll continue to work with the county attorney's office to make sure that we're maintaining or providing the level of detail that we can without crossing those HIPAA lines and compromising that confidentiality piece.
I have one last question, Madam Chair. I forgot to ask. Maybe you answered already. Just the tests that will be given at the drive-up, anyone can get those? They don't have to show symptoms?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. This leads me to another question that I've heard a few people say. Why would we want to get these tests and give the government our DNA? Do you have thoughts on that?
Well, the information, I'm not privy to and don't fully understand I don't believe any of that would be shared. That's a person's personal information. The testing is really for that particular patient, and so results are specific to that patient, and we are only notified if it's a positive case. So they will be notified if it's positive or negative. We are only notified if it's a positive case because we need to follow up with that particular patient. So we would have no other interaction if it was a negative case. So I don't believe that's Sonora Quest's policy, and I think that's something that if people have questions over, they should contact Sonora Quest particularly and specifically and ask them that question, how they protect a person's test results and personal information. But I believe they're under the same HIPAA laws, so sharing that information would be problematic.
That's clear. I just wanted to get that on the record for those that have suspicions as to why they would even want to participate. And then my final question of the day. You ever had that happen?
A lot lately.
So what I wanted to ask is Sheriff Schuster has stood up in front of this board and said that he won't enforce some of the governor's orders. My question to you is, will you still be sending your inspectors out or environmental health, when we get a complaint of a business not complying, will that still be part of the process going forward?
So we're actually discussing this right now and what steps need to be taken, because since we don't have enforcement ability per se, it seems a little strange, maybe not strange is the right word, but different, that we would go out and have that conversation. But because we have a relationship with some of those businesses at least, restaurants particularly, and hotels, we can have that conversation. And so we've talked about either via a phone call and contacting them if we receive a complaint, through the county's website or through a phone call, is to just have a conversation with them. If they don't comply with that, I've talked to Sheriff Schuster, and he has specifically stated for any cases that are in his territory that he would like those complaints forwarded to him specifically, of which we will make sure that we follow up on. And otherwise, they would be moved to law enforcement agencies and jurisdictions that do have that authority. So within the cities, for example.
Okay, any other questions? Comments? We
So-
are adjourned.
Couple of things. Can I,
go
sorry,
ahead.
don't mean to, but I know I have some of these agenda items on the 3:30 meeting, so I want to make sure I cover them with you before I have my 3:30 meeting. So they're my typical ones.
Absolutely.
So hospital capacity, I think you received the report, which shows maybe looking at Havasu Regional Medical Center, that they have 2 ICU beds available, and 16 is their capacity. So that's a change. It looks like Valley View and Warm Seas situations have improved, but looking at Havasu Regional, that's changed from the last report. PPE, just to give you an update, the vendor that we were using to purchase those 500,000 masks for the 4 hospitals and for Mojave County, that has had some changes to it, unfortunately, and we've been notified that those masks have not been able to be found, that the shipping company cannot find them. I don't have a lot of information, but I want you to also know that those masks have not been paid for. They have been purchased on a PO, and they will not be paid for until they are received. So we've been in contact with the hospitals to make them aware of the situation. So at this point, we're looking at whether or not we continue to proceed, knowing the uncertainty of whether or not this company will be able to come through and fulfill the order, or if there's something else going on and we're not aware of it. But also realizing we're competing on a federal and a state and a local level for the same resources. So whether or not it's masks or any form of PPE, we know the federal government is buying supplies, we know the state is trying to buy supplies, and we know every county and all hospitals are trying to buy supplies. So we're all competing for the same finite number of resources that are out there. So regardless of whether or not this is part of that or not, I don't know, but we'll continue to look and try to seek resources where we can. The other thing I just want you to be aware of is case numbers and Needles and Laughlin. We do try to provide an update to the group on that. Right now, Needles shows 0 cases. It's not even on the San Bernardino map at the moment, San Bernardino County. And then Laughlin is still showing a less than 5 number. So we'll continue to provide updates on that. And then I would like to try to move to reduce the number of meetings that we have with this particular group down to 1 per week. So my recommendation is that we move to a Thursday meeting, in part because it gives us more information to share throughout the week. A Monday meeting will be just starting off the week, and we'll have had some things that occur over the weekend, but generally speaking, we're providing more regular updates during the week anyway, and we'll be able to report out more, I think, on activities. So I would like to make that recommendation this afternoon. I don't know if that can be effective because we want to meet on Monday to talk about the letter, but we could continue to meet on Monday and make that change the following week.
Okay.
Madam Chair, in response to your Monday comment, that's actually on our regular meeting, so that wouldn't be a special meeting. However, I believe that because we scheduled the special meetings by board motion, we would need a motion to change the schedule moving forward as well.
Okay,
Madam Chair?
yes.
In regard to that, I think that we've been talking about transparency and everything, and I think there's quite a few people that pay attention to this meeting. I think it's a good chance for the supervisors for the questions they get, and then we all have to bug you or somebody else for the answers. When we get it out in the public forum, I think it goes a long ways to being more open to the public, and I know the media watches it too, so I'm not in favor of cutting down the meetings any at all.
Okay, any other comments? Supervisor Angus?
So right now, because these meetings have moved a little, so right now the 2 are scheduled when?
So the 1 o'clock meetings that we typically have are on Mondays and Thursdays at 1 o'clock. Today's has been moved to 3:30 because of this meeting, kind of a feeling that this would extend beyond that 1 o'clock timeframe, and our discussion would, in addition to the press conference. So that was pushed out. But typically, it's Monday and Thursday at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Maybe I misunderstood that. I thought we were talking about our meeting.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, it
Our
is on
meeting, though, is noon. She's talking about the meeting that she holds.
Correct.
Is 1 o'clock.
Oh,
Right.
so these are going to stay the same?
Well, that would be my question. And so
looking for a
Supervisor
motion if
Johnson,
we
I
wanna
think,
change
believes that
Oh, yeah, he's talking about
we
this
would
meeting.
continue, so, and which is just fine. I just want you to be aware of what my recommendation would be at 3:30 today for the 1 o'clock meeting, because they were sort of tied together before. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
But we're not exactly tied to them. You can have one meeting with them, but still have 2 meetings with us.
Correct, absolutely.
So the motion would be to limit our meetings to 1 a week, Thursday at noon, or we could continue the direction that we're in now and have the 2 meetings a week on Monday and Thursday at noon.
Which would need no motion.
Right.
Only we change it.
Right. So seeing no motion, we'll continue with two meetings a week.
Okay, that works just fine.
Okay, anything else, Denise?
No, I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay. We are adjourned.